Hi, on the Woodpecker today. I'm making this huge table so I'll be able to cut plywood sheets at 90 degrees with my track saw more easily. I got this idea from Donald, one of my listeners. He sent me those pictures of his setup. It's like an MFT table, and he used it to make 90-degree cuts. The only thing needed is a table with some holes and some parf dogs. The table must have 20mm holes, and you're set. But I don't have a 20mm drill bit. This was the ideal opportunity to go back to Pierre's garage. That's where he made some 3/4 of an inch parf dogs for me. This is a drill bit I own. And here are my parf dogs, identical to the ones we can buy, except they're 3/4 of an inch. But I'm not done yet. I need to make a table. The first thing I have to do is cut a 2x12, 10 feet long. Next, I make sure I have one side straight. Then I can rip 4 pieces out of it. Now it's time to begin to work on the table. And for that, I use some Baltic birch plywood. It's never easy to carry those big sheets of plywood. That's why my first cut is a bit wider than what I actually need. I cut both sheets in two like this. Then I move the fence to the exact width and cut all the pieces to the same width. Here are my 4 panels in place, but I need to do something to hold them together. It's not too fancy. I stick some pieces of reclaimed hardwood flooring between the 2 panels, make some marks, and drill 4 mortise holes. I fill each hole with a domino right away. This way, everything stays in place. When I'm done, I identify each corner. I did it in such a way that each piece can only go in one place. Now I can begin tracing where I want each hole. The first rule is at 32mm from the edge. All the others are 128mm apart. When all the marks are done, I trace a line across all of them. And here's the final result. Each intersection will get a hole. But the 128mm is not a random number. It's a fraction of 32, which is the European standard spacing. A real MFT table has a spacing of 96. But with this spacing, the cut would be in the middle of a row of holes, and I don't want that. That's why I chose 128. Now I can better mark each intersection and dismantle all the panels. Since the intersections are well defined, I can remove all the lines. But before drilling the holes, I'm going to varnish this. So after pinning this really well, I spray the first coat of varnish. When it's dry, I sand it a little at slow speed and spray a second coat. Okay, this is maybe overkill, but I like the look of varnished wood. While the varnish dries, I can glue the dominoes into the floor planks. And now that the varnish is dry, it's time to drill this. Okay, it's quite long, but not too complicated. I just need to put the tip of the drill bit into the dimple I made and drill a hole. Okay, it's quite repetitive. When a panel is done, I do the same thing to the next one. Yes, it's really boring stuff. But it still took me a little while before noticing that I was massacring the other side of the plywood. So after that, I use a hose collar to stop the bit from drilling right through. Then I'm able to finish the holes on the other side. It's a bit cleaner this way. After a long while, all the holes are done, so I can put it all together again. And finally, try this. Perfect. If I try it elsewhere, perfect again. I also want to check if it's square. Here is the first measurement. And if I measure the other diagonal, well, it's close enough for me. I did this in several other places, and I always got the same results. I began this by cutting a pattern with my CNC and use it to drill the holes with a router. I ended up with way less precision than this, and now I have 4 panels with a lot of holes that are useless. But I'm not done. I need some dowel lengths to hold the base to the plywood and drill some holes in the base. This way the support won't move under the table. I drill 1 hole at each end of each panel. The last thing to do is to mark what I need to cut on the base, and my table is completely done. Let me show you how it works. Let's say I want to cut this from this sheet of plywood. Okay, normally I would take for granted that the factory cut is good. I would trace 2 lines, put the guide on the lines, add 2 clamps, and cut it. Now with my new table, I insert 2 puff dogs on one side, the third one a bit further than the plywood width, push the plywood on the puff dogs, and the guide on the 2 long ones, move the plywood to the line, and cut. But I notice that my guide is not on both lines. It must be that the plywood is not really square. I'm going to check this position. Here's the measure of one diagonal and the other. Perfect, I'm satisfied. And if I want a repetitive cut, I have plenty of space to add a stop block. Now it's time to cut this. Okay, the cut is done outside the table, but I could easily have made it inside the table. And if I verify my cut with a square, perfect again. With all those holes, I can even have several different angles with the guide. And if I don't have the desired one, well, I can drill another hole. Yes, I know, it's quite big for a cutting table. But if I want, I can only use 1, 2, or 3 panels. And if I use less than 4, I can put this directly on my workbench without the bottom support. This was my new cutting table. I don't know if, like me, Donald inspired you to make your own, but now you know how I made mine. And see you soon, maybe cutting big sheets of plywood in another episode of The Woodpecker.